I wanted to say this about like when he's unmasked in front of like the Times Square. It sort of feels like we're living this moment in real time with like the whole Luigi thing going on, because when he first allegedly did what he did, he was like masked and no one knew who he was, and there was like this big manhunt for him. And as soon as like people figured out his identity, it's like people were already on his side. The cherry on top was then finding out that this guy was also handsome. I feel like the universe just threw us a bone with that one. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sin. Before I get started, I wanted to remind everyone to please subscribe. Today I wanted to talk about this underrated film, and I say underrated just because like I don't think it got a lot of distribution in America, well, the US. Maybe it was big in the UK when it came out in October. It's called Timestalker. This is what Google says is a synopsis. Agnes repeatedly falls for the wrong guy, dies a grim death, and is reincarnated a century later. As she experiences romantic misfortune through different eras of history, Agnes seeks to avoid repeating mistakes and finally breaking the cycle. I was trying to find The Last Showgirl because I want to review that movie as well, and I couldn't find it, and I realized it's because it hasn't been released yet. As I was trying to find it, I came across this movie. This poster caught my attention. I watched the trailer. It looks so campy and unique. I was like, I have to watch this. So we open with Agnes, and she is, what is it called? I know I learned this in school. I'm not dumb. Spinning yarn? She's spinning yarn. Yep. We open on Agnes, and she is spinning yarn when her dog runs out. He runs out because she's distracted by like a memory of her listening to this illegal preacher. I didn't know that like back then, like the only people that could preach about God were like, I guess, people affiliated with the church. So if you were just like preaching on your own, like that was illegal. They arrest the guy that's like illegally preaching. So crazy what is considered illegal in society and what's not considered illegal. This is the 1600s. So he is arrested and he's going to be hanged in the Times Square. Not hanged. He's not going to be hanged. He's going to be like, listen to this.
I sentence ye to be broken on the wheel. Your limbs will be snapped, your hands, feet and paws parted, fray your body, and then ye will be hanged. The neck, then burned, then your head parted from your neck, placed on a spike. Is that everything?
It's like a laundry list of things that's gonna happen to this man. He's gonna be tortured and then killed. When he's unmasked, she like falls in love with him. She already, I think, was enamored by like what he was saying and when he was preaching, but then seeing that he was hot also just like sold it to her even more. Also, I wanted to say this about like when he's unmasked in front of like the Times Square. It sort of feels like we're living this moment in real time with like the whole Luigi thing going on, because when he first allegedly did what he did, he was like masked and no one knew who he was, and there was like this big manhunt for him. And as soon as like people figured out his identity, it's like people were already on his side. The cherry on top was then finding out that this guy was also handsome. I feel like the universe just threw us a bone with that one. And she tries to save him and accidentally dies herself.
No! No, George!
So I guess he was supposed to die in this timeline, and because she died, she kind of like died in his place, and so that's the big, I guess, cosmic no-no, and so she is reincarnated. Oh, also, I forgot, she's not the only one that's reincarnated every time. In the 1700s, she is this wife of a nobleman, and she's explaining to her maid that although she has all these material things and she's very grateful and happy and loves her life, she feels this like emptiness. She feels like this void that can't really be filled with all the material things that she owns. Besides that void she feels, the only thing she can really complain about her life is her husband. Best thing about being married to her is the fact that like he's away traveling for most of the time they've been married. And we're introduced to her husband, which is George, and George is actually the reincarnation of her dog George. We can see the characteristics of his past life and his past body embodied in this new body. You know, he growls and he like bares his teeth and all of these things. He's like animalistic in a way, which is what they're trying to convey, but even in that, he is so funny in this scene when they're introduced to him, because she's kind of like worried that he's gonna do something when he walks in, but all he does is like rip off her wig. He doesn't do anything else. He just rips it off and he just starts having a conversation with her, and they start like having dinner. I find it hilarious because like imagine not liking someone's wig to the point where you're just like, oh, snatched.
That is the real thing. Snatched.
Because he doesn't like her wig, he orders her to go get a new one. And so on her way to get this new wig, she spots Alex. In this life, he is a thief. And because she kind of has this like vague memory of him, she is like struck by him. She's like, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing him. I'm missing love in my life because my marriage to my husband is like loveless. So I need to be with this beautiful man. And then when she's home, she has this conversation with her servant. He basically tells her like, she's not as free as she thinks she is.
Me to see a pretty bird caged.
Well, how else would one enjoy the bird?
I'm not talking about the bird.
Which I think is such big brain time conversation to have with this woman. And she's one of the luckier ones that has like a husband that's not around to really enforce a lot of rules. So she kind of gets to do what she wants. She puts her foot down and like talks back to her husband and like demands maybe a little bit more respect like as a person. And he burns all her books, which I think is so sad, but it makes sense.
I think this is what they call burning passion.
But that only fuels the fire, metaphorically and literally. But they still go out. They go to this ball where Alex is at. And they see each other and they go to a like secluded room, and she's trying to explain this. And I think he just the whole time makes fun of her wig. She cannot win. She cannot win. If it was me, oh, I'm done. I get the message. All the hints, loud and clear. You don't want anything to do with me. I'm gonna go.
I'm done. You're gone. Goodbye. Do you understand?
Seriously?
No, not seriously. Super seriously.
But that's not an entertaining story. So obviously her husband comes in, finds them, drags them out, and takes them home.
I'm really sorry. I had no idea.
I will hang him from a noose in the couple.
I think he's gonna kill them. She realizes like there's only one way out of this, and it's like by her dying. She just accepts her fate. I think she like eggs her husband on and he like decapitates her. And then they get reincarnated in the 1800s. This one's a little shorter.
Sir? Sir?
That's it. That's all we get from that time period. And then after that, we get pushed way forward into the 1980s. In this time period, her and Meg are still friends. George is an insane stalker. Didn't like where that was going. Alex is a pop star and Scipio is Alex's manager. It starts with like her kind of finding this like confidence in herself and like being single and like really enjoying the fruits of all the women's labor that like fought for women's rights and all that stuff. And so having a partner isn't really in the forefront of her mind. Meg becomes a lesbian feminist. Because it's been hinted the whole time that the reason Meg is friends with her is because Meg is in love with her. And back in the 1600s, when they first crossed paths as souls, she tried to kiss her. That's just always how it is. You're always in love with a straight woman who doesn't realize how bad men in her life treat her. And you could treat her so much better, but that's just a canon event that no lesbian can escape, I guess. And so they kind of reconnect, and she is just appalled by the way Agnes is living her life. And so she becomes obsessed with Alex. And when she brings Meg to her apartment and Meg sees this kind of serial killer shrine wall thing, she's a little concerned. And also this scene is so crazy.
I don't have it this week either, sorry. Who was that? That's my landlord. He's very friendly.
No. The dude just walks in, no words. Was probably just expecting them to And I didn't even ask Meg to leave the room or anything. Like, I'm not judging or anything, but it just, his behavior is what's leaving me speechless. His behavior. Meg is worried. Meg tries to talk some sense into her.
It's Alex Phoenix. Every woman in the world is in love with him.
Obviously, it falls on deaf ears because obviously, as a lesbian who has decentered men, you're never really going to get through to other women, straight or not, who haven't decentered men, especially if this woman is needs to convince this guy to fall in love with her so that she can learn a cosmic lesson. Like, it's already hard to convince your friends that they deserve better treatment from men. I can only imagine the difficult task of trying to convince your friend that a super pop star that she's never met is the love of her life, because in past lives, that was the case. And so she goes to the show, she gets backstage. She's basically explaining to him their past lives and why they need to be together and why they should be in love and all these things, and it'll help break the cycle and all of these things. And he's not really understanding it because he's a pop star, probably on cocaine, that has never loved her or cared about her. So yeah, he's not going to be in tune with the cosmos, I don't think. I don't think that's the prime candidate for that conversation. Because he's not understanding it, she draws a gun on him. His manager comes in, Scipio comes in. And what happens next is so funny to me because she just had a gun pointed to this man's forehead, didn't pull the trigger, and then she just asks for an autograph.
To Agnes, my greatest fan. Love forever. Alex. I just put a kiss there.
And leaves. I don't know about you, but I feel like you have to have some balls. Like what? That is just so absurd. I did not think that's where that was gonna go. But she leaves and she goes to therapy. And in therapy, basically, how it's explained to her was that she was just in a parasocial relationship brought on by psychosis.
You formed dreams to protect yourself and chose someone who would never love you so you could stay in them.
But it's so funny the way that like the therapist explains it with like a smile on her face.
The dream is over. Help yourself to cookies.
Like, if I had a therapist explain to me something very serious about my mental health with the biggest like Barney smile on their face, I would probably lose it again. I would. My mind would break again. I'm pretty sure of it. But she kind of just accepts it and she reconnects with Meg, and Meg tries to confess her love to her.
You're the only person who ever cares, but I've broken the cycle.
I know, but you can get another one.
I'm getting married.
What? Who to?
I feel like there's two canon events for lesbians. There's the one that's like realizing like, oh, I'm in love with a straight woman. And if you don't stop being in love with straight women and find other queer women to date, you then down the line have to experience this other canon event, which is trying to confess your love to that straight woman, who then breaks your heart again by like telling you like she doesn't feel the same way because obviously, and two, that she's engaged or in love or actively dating a straight man. We do it to ourselves. It's a form of self-harm that's not visible on the body to go through this as a lesbian. I can't explain it. The fiance in question, George. And if we remember about anything about George in this lifetime, George is an incel psycho stalker. And the thing she likes about him is that he knows everything about her, which is kind of hard to not do if all you've ever done is stalk this person. And they have this weird interaction.
You dare. Don't you fucking dare.
I think it's a metaphor for what straight women put up with in heterosexual relationships, because guys don't really like them. But it was just weird. I didn't like it. It was uncomfortable. But they're getting married. And then on her wedding day, as she's walking down the aisle, she has this memory. Because she recognized Alex and like was starting to have those vague memories of their past lives again. George was jealous in that lifetime too and kills her again. And so she knew like if she married George in this timeline, that's another mistake she can't make. She needs to break it off with George. She needs to break it off with George, let Alex die, and live happily with Meg, I think is the lesson she should be learning. And so she breaks off the wedding and is killed by George. And she goes to, I guess, purgatory?
Agnes.
I'm a revolutionary.
Agnes.
Agnes!
And so she doesn't go to the other side, and she comes back into her body, and she kisses Meg, and she goes off to do what she needs to do. So that happened. I thought she learned her lesson. I thought like, okay, this is it. Like Alex dies by her hands, you know? Like maybe this is the lesson. We are then transported to 21 something.
I love you.
And that's how the movie ends. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that ending. I don't feel like that answered my question. I feel like even if it had ended in the 80s with like her shooting both their brains out, I feel like even that would have been a more satisfying conclusion. But hey, what do I know? But I love this movie more so than just the plot. I love it for its use of metaphors, symbolism, cinematography, color, characters. It was such a brilliant film that is so underrated. Something I learned in film school when I was studying in LA was that you as a director and a cinematographer, you need to show what you're trying to say, not just say it with like the dialogue and the characters. Like there are so many elements that go into storytelling when it's a visual medium that you should take advantage of every single one. The music, the audio, the dialogue, the props, the color, the costuming, the makeup, the characters. I feel like Alice did such a good job. I'm interpreting pink to be the color of love and the color that she uses to really drive home the point and symbolizes that it's that kind of love that is tethering them together across all the lives and the timeline. And so whenever pink is on screen, it's used and manipulated in a way that gets that point across. And it's also used as like it's used as like a marker, like you know something is going to happen, you know that's like a pivotal plot point or they're going to have an interaction or something is going to happen. I feel like when I watch movies now, that kind of direction is a lost art. I feel it's kind of hard to bring it back to a place of artistic expression. That's what I feel like this movie is. I could go on and on and on because this film was just so beautifully thought out and executed, and that's why I feel like it's so underrated, because a movie like this is definitely a movie that like we would study in cinematography class. This is definitely the kind of art that film can be. So I definitely recommend you watch this. I feel like it is an underrated movie that any film nerd would really appreciate. If you're kind of looking out for those things, you're gonna be very engaged and love it. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time. I love making these videos. I have so much fun with them, and I hope you guys love watching them as much as I love making them. Until I see you next time, bye.